There we go. That's better. Hi everyone. Sorry, just switching the Friday Spry players to working from home. So just a few technical difficulties. So what we're looking at here today is how you can reasonably easily lock in place some of your source schedules. So this has come up a couple of times in the last few weeks where let's say you have the first year of your schedule, you have it perfect, you have it working exactly how you want to have it working, but you want to then after a certain date do something a little bit different. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you how you can use custom fields to effectively cheat your way through to a source path which is hard-coded your path in. So let's say you've got this very specific source path for the first 3, 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is, and then after that you can put in something a lot less specific. You can do normal Spry pathing. So we're going to have a few different custom fields here. We've got 4 filter type custom fields and a 5th one which I haven't used yet, but I'll show you why you might want to use it. And what this is the hard-coded path line is just a way of splitting out the difference between what a productive path and a non-productive path looks like. The formulas in these look pretty complicated. I've put them in the description of the video so that you can copy and paste them. Just note that the greater than and less than symbols, YouTube doesn't let me put them in the comments. If you get stuck with this and you want a bit quick hand, shoot us a message, support@precisionmining.com. Happy to point you in the right direction. What this does is it looks at the output schedule and it actually does 2 lines in one. So I'm going to show you the result of this before I get into any more of how it's been built, which is that you'll get this hard-coded path line result from your schedule, which can be, and I'm just going to do one for the time being, but this line can be copy-pasted into your equipment path, and you can have as many of these as you need. And what it does is there's 2 lines in one. We have a semicolon here, which means that we've got 2 lines in one. The first line is a date delay, making sure that we are not going any further. We're not starting earlier than we should be. And so it takes the start date and says we'll stop until you've hit the start date. And we're just going to we've got a new non-productive process here called schedule matching. So we just kind of make sure that the next task doesn't happen until the date that it's supposed to start. And then what we do is we say, okay, now what you're going to do is blast or whatever activity it is. And we put in the process that it worked, the percentage that it did, and the exact rate and exact equipment count. So this is in order to make sure that essentially you get exactly the same information that the previous schedule would have had. And so what you can do with this output schedule, if we go back to the output schedule, if you pick a particular piece of equipment, we'll just go with the blast equipment. If we take this gear and we export out this schedule, and I would recommend that you do it to XLSX while you have this hard-coded path line visible, just because it's going to be, otherwise if you go to CSV, you just get a lot more information than maybe you need. So I'll spit that out to the folder. I'll pop it open in Excel. And what I can do is take this hard-coded path line, copy-paste the whole lot, go back to my equipment, and paste in this long list of very specific, very very much hard-coded series of things to make sure that I delay at all the appropriate times. So in terms of the other things that are building this up, so there's a difference between what you want to do for a productive and a non-productive process. So that's why we have a productive path line and a non-productive path line. The non-productive path line is much simpler. It just shows you, it's just a date delay until the end date of that line of the schedule. We still have exactly the same schedule matching date delay at the start. So we're still making sure we don't jump ahead of ourselves. We're waiting until the correct date. So we're saying we're waiting until this date. which is what happened in the previous schedule, and then we're firing it off at a certain rate. The source node, this is a custom field because for the productive path line, we want to point it at the appropriate source location, which is this information here. Now, there's just nothing in custom fields at the moment that lets you just read that, so you have to create that yourself. The easiest way to do this, you can type it out manually if you know your exact structure. For what it's worth, the easiest way to do this is to just create a real quick proximity constraint or something that asks for a grouping expression. To pop open the little generate grouping expression button with all the options ticked on, grab that, steal that. That will give you the exact layer that you need for this particular process. So back to custom fields, so you have that pasted in there. And we only use that for the productive path line. So for what it's worth, this should probably have a IsProductiveProcess. And this should have a not. Not that it really matters. It matters where you use them. But this is not to be used for a productive process, and this is not to be used for a non-productive process. So the only other thing to think about is the effect of availability and utilization. So at the moment in this particular function, I'm using the normal hourly rate. Now the hourly rate relies on operating hours, which has already had time usage modeling. It's already operating. It's based on operating hours, which have been converted down from calendar hours. Now what you may like to do to make sure that things are not even affected by your calendar is to set your availability and utilization for your equipment for the fixed period to 100%. So making sure that essentially you don't use a calendar for that period of time. And then what you can do is you can, instead of using the normal hourly rate, we can use a calendar hours rate, which is just a backwards converted. Essentially, if you assume 100% availability and utilization, what would the actual hourly rate be? And that should actually be multiplied by. So you want to reduce your hourly rate because you're going to have more calendar hours than operating hours. So we want to take our hourly rate and multiply it by whatever that factor was. So if you had no calendar hour conversion, then this would be a 1. If you had anything other than that, it would be less than 1. So you're reducing your rate. You're slowing it down because you're introducing more operating hours than you would have had before. So that function there, and then what we do is we take this calendar hours rate, and instead of using the normal hourly rate, we put in, I called it hours rate, it should be called hourly rate, but and then we put that in here, and that change will be sufficient to essentially give us a productive path line that ignores your calendar. Now, if you wanted to use that, what you would want to make sure is that, so let's say you've got this availability and utilization here. You may want to say if current date is less than your decided date. So you might go the first 1 Feb 2021. Then use 100%. So the if goes true and then false. So that function there says if, just for clarity, if your date is less than the 1st of Feb, then 100%. Otherwise, go back to what you had before. You do the same thing for utilization. There's no way to set availability and utilization in the source path. So you need to do this kind of backwards conversion. If you want to absolutely guarantee that no matter what you do to your calendar, no matter what you do to your paths, you may also want to be setting ignore dependencies and ignore constraints on as well, so that it even ignores any changes that you make to like any part of your scheduling engine. And the other little trick that you might want to do, because these lines, you may end up with hundreds, if not thousands, or tens of thousands of lines in here, is wrap them in a region so that you're really clear about which component it is. And I might go this, I won't hard type it, I'll show you the keyboard shortcut, or sorry, the mouse shortcut. So we shift select the whole lot, right click, choose surround with region. And then next to the word region, we put a space, and then we can type in, say, hard-coded path from custom field. And then what happens is if we collapse that region, it just gives us a nice little collapsed component that we can then add our own further information to. So I hope that was clear. It can be a little bit tricky. As I said, the formulas that I used are in the description of the video. If there's anything else, if that doesn't work for you, you've got other questions about it, hit us up, support@precisionmining.com. Otherwise, have a great weekend, stay safe, and we'll see you next week.